So this week our text brings us to the end of David's reign and then transition to his son Solomon, and offers us a snapshot into that transition that presents him as the model for power succession, someone who's honored by the privilege enough to know that the job is not self-promotion and personal success, but meeting the needs of the community in that moment. And he chooses to set this stage at a place of connection to his family's traditions and to God's collective investment with the people of God through the ages. All of this highlights how Solomon, as Professor Kyle Brooks of the University of San Diego has said, is deeply connected to a sacred lineage and history grounded in this geographical location. He's a participant in activities and rituals that have been established and reinforced in this place for generations. Gibeon is a location where God's presence and power have been shown, and it is where God shows up to engage Solomon in a new way. Solomon faces the challenge that most successors will also face: how to faithfully honor your roots while setting a course for the future. Deeply connected to a sacred lineage and history grounded in geographical location. A key phrase for all people of faith in all places. Addressing the ever-present concerns of legacy and vision. It's a delicate balance to strike. It is from this balance of both that knowledge can become wisdom. The story of Solomon's succession was to remind the people living in hard times, those exiled in Babylon, those oppressed in future generations, those who were looking back on history as if that was the good moment, that there is value in looking back, but only as a guide for what comes next. When we see Solomon's tale as not just his private journey, but one for the whole of the faithful people, we can also make sure that we see from that perspective that shows us the purpose of succession is not self-promotion, but collective perpetuation. God's ultimate intent was not royalty over Israel, but the flourishing of the people in relationship with God. Flourishing is not about survival. It is beyond that moment. It is about excitement and an attitude of abundance, enough knowledge to do the work of the moment and the vision into the next. In this moment of life, maybe due to the state of our world, the troubles of our neighborhoods, or just inside ourselves, we can be put into a perpetual survival mode, a place where it's hard to make decisions, where we can feel unmotivated or a persistent, unresolved anxiety or stress, where focus is hard to come by, but so is the ability to unwind, where our concerns turn us against others, so the blame game can begin. In these moments, we turn myopic in our survival mode. Survival strategies ensure that it's possible to see the next hour, the next day, but it's a self-forward posture. It isn't about others, because our survival is so large in our minds that we have blinders that focus us small. Living in this way causes strained relationships. It engenders either-or thinking, and it encourages us to disengage as soon as our wants are not met. This isn't God's plan for life. God's plan, as we have seen in the covenants that come before Solomon, that Noah rainbow of covering peace, the Abrahamic generations spread out like the stars above the desert sky, the royal line of David to rule in perpetuity. These are glimpses beyond a survival to an idea of flourishing. Flourishing, thriving. These are not about the individual, but about the whole people. when all have their survival needs met. As psychologists have been telling us since Maslow, we can work for the world. And to get to that vision, we see how the story of Solomon is built on that hierarchy. In the times of Judges, the nation comes together under leadership for the first time. Then under Saul and David, the nation becomes solidified. And here at Solomon's transition to power, the leader is able to place themselves in the system and look beyond. In the work of moving toward personal thriving, there are several steps as well. And you can see them in Solomon's speech to God, in fact. Acknowledge your situation, who you are, where you are, how you got to this point. Accept yourself, practice self-compassion, forgive yourself, or in other words, take care of yourself. Then seek support. Look for those who will assist you. And then move beyond being helped to figure out where you have the capability and responsibility to be the helper. When Solomon does ask God for a gift, it's for a gift specifically for the ability to discern the path forward. We rest on the shoulders of those whose labor and effort have made our presence possible, and we do well to humbly acknowledge that inheritance while courageously taking on our present responsibilities. It is this tension that's at the heart of this passage and of life in the church today. How do we take stock of those who have done incredible things and built systems of faith and leadership and space? And how do we incorporate those valuable offerings into our moment today? At what point do we move from being helped to being the helper? This is a constant balance and a dance of moving back and forth from one to the other, knowing that we will need to be helped and knowing that we will need to be the helper. And something I think we struggle to move back into in our lives post-pandemic. Researchers have shown how the pandemic has shifted many things in our culture, but specifically for the church, beyond the changes of worship process that pandemic required, which have now become permanent, right? Our cameras. The changes in other areas of the church have not yet been negotiated and discerned. 6 years ago, it was pretty close to unlikely that we would be an online worshiping community. And yet, here we are. But are we living best into that amount of hybrid life? Not yet. We could do an entire formation series on how to include those beyond the building in worship in more connective ways, and those days are still to come. What about our fellowship and faith formation activities? Are we doing our best to connect beyond the screen in those activities as well? Not yet. Most of our human connection activities are in person only. And that's not wrong. It's necessary. And it is what can restore some of the vitality that pandemic thinking has stunted in cultural life. But it's also an indicator that there is yet more growth to come for us, because the screens aren't going away, right? We must figure out how to connect through and between them. But maybe most importantly, the question is, whose responsibility is it to have those conversations, those discussions, to make a plan for the future? The answer is not just me, for sure. There are ways of being church that I have yet to even contemplate that might be a great benefit for our little church. Like the idea of that outdoor block party coming up at the end of September. Yes, it's a game night. Yes, it's an outdoor chance to be together. But what a wonderful way to engage our fellowship and engage this neighborhood who knows our building but might not know our faces, and who might not worship here, or who may have worshiped here in previous days. It didn't come from me, but from others on the gift teams. How can we tell the story of this place? How can we share HUCC better and bigger and more widely? This is the question of wisdom. In this stage of church life, we can sit back and bemoan that our church is small. We can live with the knowledge that we're small. Or we can accept that our size is what allows us to live into it fully, to share our authentic identity with the world. And we can get excited about just how countercultural our experience of church can be. A place to feel known, not just by your number or your last name, but to be known in all that you are. Where you last went on vacation, what you're looking forward to this fall, who you are now, a place to feel known and wanted in a world that just gets bigger and bigger. Resilience and trust is necessary at this stage. There are challenges that we have overcome, and there are ones to come. But one thing that has come out of pandemic life is a renewed sense of willingness to be bold. As one person put it, a new backbone, making a huge difference in the ability to be bold to the world. This backbone supports our vision and mission to remind us to be bold, not just because we should be so, or because it will drive more people here, but because we come from a tradition of boldness, evidenced for centuries, and we can see ourselves as bold people needed in this world. Through the reign of Solomon, though the reign of Solomon was not without its own troubled missteps, his reign suggests that power and authority are not meant for permanent possession, but for temporal stewardship. In the end, the throne does not belong to him. He simply plays his role in keeping the traditions alive and well. In much the same way, the church does not belong to any one person or any one leader. The church is a growing and changing organism that is built to express God in relationship, as known to us in the story of Christ, who aligns with the commonness of bread to bring unity. I am the bread of life. In the wisdom of historical traditions that ask us to think deeply, to speak honestly, and the requirement that we make a personal investment in the future. Those stages of thriving: acknowledge the situation, accept and take care of yourself, look for those who can help you, and take accountability upon yourself to be the change agent. We are invited to seek for the flourishing of the world, the thriving of God's world. Wisdom sets the table and invites humanity to eat and to rest so that we might live and walk in the way of insight. May it be so today. Amen.